G'day, welcome back to the channel. Bit of a catch up. I thought I'd do some more of the answers to the Ask Me Anything video, so I've got that on the screen here. I'll have a look, see what questions there are, see if I can give you some insights. Let's have a look. What have we got here? Ghost Rider FPV says, beard tips, Mr. Simpson. I must know, how do you maintain such epic beard symmetry? Well, you just trim both sides to the same length. There you go. Tip of the day. No, seriously, actually, it is quite difficult. And one of the problems is I have an asymmetric face. My face is incredibly asymmetric. Apparently, one of the hallmarks of beauty is symmetry. I'm so butt ugly because my face is just so asymmetric. In fact, if I can, let me go over here and I'll see if I can put me over there as well. But I'll flip me around and see if you can spot the difference. That's a good way to tell if something's symmetrical, is to look at the mirror image of it, and it looks quite different. Yeah, I'm quite asymmetric. In fact, my whole body's asymmetric. Even, you know, this shoulder, one shoulder's higher than the other and one arm's bigger than the other. It's like Mr. Asymmetry. Yeah, but basically when it comes to keeping the beard trimmed, well, I used to have it fairly long and it looked scruffy and I look like Santa Claus, which isn't too bad at Christmas time because little kids follow you down the street begging for things. Yeah. But what I do is now I just trim it pretty short. Get number two on the old sheep shearing thingy attachment, and that's it. I do that probably once a week, and there we go. I've just done it this morning, so it probably doesn't look too bad. But I do chisel out these bits because I don't like to look scruffy out. A lot of people say, oh, you only grow a beard because you're lazy and you can't be bothered shaving. Well, actually, it takes more time to do the indenty bits than it does to just do a full shave. So I'm less lazy than someone that just shaves all the hair off. You've got to be careful. You've got to manicure. You've got to do the edges. You know, you get the weed whacker out. Speaking of which, Manscaped have never offered to sponsor my videos. I don't know why. I think I do know why, because the only way you could manscape some of my other follicular growth would be brush fire, controlled burn off. That's all you could do. I don't think their little tools would have hope in hell. Where'd you get older? Some things like hair grows in different places and it grows stronger. Not so much up here, but hey, that's life. What else have we got to answer today? 507 RC asks, tell us more about why you're using Linux on your computer versus the other choices, pros, cons, how well does it run DaVinci Resolve? I've been using Linux for years and years, and let me just check. Years, long time, long time. In fact, way back, would be when Red Hat came out, I started using Linux then. I've used Linux and other forms of Unix off and on over many years. Used QNX, which was a Canadian product for real-time software development. Fantastic product. I love that thing. I even used it for general desktop applications for a while. But Linux is what I use because I'm a Scrooge. I don't want to pay Microsoft for something that I can get for free, and it just works so well. Yeah, it used to be that using Linux or any other flavor of Unix required a little bit more brain power because it wasn't as easy. But these days, with the distributions like Ubuntu and Mint, I run Linux Mint, it's just like using Windows anyway. It's all point and click, and you don't have to use command lines very often at all. The software updates are automatic, and you've got a huge range of available free software. All the stuff I do, all the software I use on here is free. I've got LibreOffice, which is like Microsoft Office. I use Netscape browser, not Netscape, it's Firefox now. See how old I am. I'm so old. I use Firefox browser because I just prefer what it does to Chrome and Edge and all the other crap browsers that are out there. And so yeah, I use it. I love it. It's fantastic. And it just works. It just works. I don't have to reboot every now and then. I've never had a blue screen of death with Linux because I don't have it. But yeah, as for DaVinci Resolve, well, on the other side of this room, my video editing computer is set up and I run Windows on it. Why do I run Windows on it? Well, because, sad to say, there is a Linux version of DaVinci Resolve, but there are some limitations. Some of the things, some audio formats not supported quite so well, and there's other audio problems. It's not, because Linux is a little, well, there's so many flavors of it. It seems that DaVinci or Blackmagic Design, the company that makes Resolve, have decided to go for a rather esoteric distro as their baseline. So anything else, if it works, good for you, but no guarantees. And although people are using it with Ubuntu and Mint and other distributions, it's just not as easy to set up, and it's only for editing. So the only thing I do on that machine is edit videos. So I don't mind. It's completely separate. It is. It's isolated from the rest of my system because I don't want a Windows machine on my network for obvious reasons. Yeah, so that's Linux. I'd say if you haven't tried it, give it a go. It's free, costs nothing. Easy enough. If you've used Windows, you'll find Linux is pretty damn straightforward. And there's only a few extra bits and pieces to pick up along the way, but you can use it right from the get-go. Fantastic. And it works really well on older hardware. You got an old computer, maybe one that an old, I don't know, even an old Pentium, going back to the old days, coal-powered computer. If you got one of those, throw Linux on it, you will be gobsmacked at how well it works. In fact, I've seen, you can go and buy these little, where are they? I don't have one. I've lost it. Never mind. Oh, here's one. Oh, excuse me while I reach out of shot. You can go and buy little USB thumb drives now, which claim to revive your computer. If your computer's broken, put this in, it'll work, And they say it reinvigorates your computer, gives it more performance, and it's just Linux on a stick. You can actually download a Linux image, put it on a USB drive and plug it in, and it'll just run Linux. You don't have to change anything on your computer. Just run it from the USB drive. Gives you a feel for Linux. It's a great way to do it. And then when you unplug that, your computer's the same as it was. Fantastic. What else have we got? GizFPV asks a very important question, one that everybody wants to know. Do you ever actually do part 2 videos? Well, I'm going to answer that in part 2 of this video. And did you get the artwork I sent you? Yes, I did, and I'm going to do a thing on that in RC Model Reviews. As I say, RC Model Reviews has been on a bit of a hiatus because New Zealand is cut off from the world. Stuff doesn't seem to be arriving, although I do have some stuff that I have been flying to review, and I've lost it. Oh no, here we go. This is coming up. I don't even know if they make this anymore because I'm going to be really late in reviewing it. It is the Holybro Cine. Whoop. Works really well, actually, but I'm going to do a full review on that. And of course, I also have over here the Runcam MIPI camera. People have reviewed that, but I'm going to try that out on the DJI digital system. And of course, I've got other stuff I'm working on too, but the supply of products has been crap. So when I relaunch RC Model Reviews, which I'm going to do shortly because I've got a couple of videos in the can, which I think people will find very interesting about FPV, about choosing the right FPV system, about if you just want to get into FPV without taking too much risk, and the question that everybody wants to know, which FPV system is best for me? Analog, SharkBite, or DJI? That's a really hard question to answer, but I'm going to give you all the ammo you need to make your own answer. I'll tell you how it all works and what the pros and cons are. You can decide for yourself which way to go. But the bottom line is, any FPV is better than no FPV, so you can't go wrong. Doesn't matter what you choose, you will love it if you're not already into FPV. Widzy asks, what is the oldest piece of RC tech you own that still works? My thumb. In the early days of RC, we had the push-button transmitters, single channel, just a button. You just pushed a button. There was a switch to turn it on and a button. That's all you had. No trims, no LCDs, no nothing. It was just a button on a box. It's fantastic. And you pushed it with your thumb. And that's the oldest piece of RC tech I've got is my thumb. Actually, aside from my thumb, I do have, I think I've featured it on this channel before, or maybe on RC Model Reviews, a set of OS Pixie single channel super regenerative radio control gear from the 1960s. I do hope I can get that into a model at some stage, but it's on 27 megs, so interference is quite a high probability. Range is reasonably limited, and because it's what we call super regenerative, it's super regen, it actually has a it doesn't tune in very well, so it'll pick up anything on the 27 megahertz band, whether it's on the intended frequency or not. It's got very broad tuning with super regen, so you've got to make sure the band is absolutely clear before you use it, or you're just going to get shot down out of the sky. So, but we'll give it a go. What's to lose? Max asks, what do you think of electric vehicles? Oh, I love electric vehicles. Now, I did a video probably a decade ago, more than a decade ago, I think, where just after Tesla brought out their first EV, the Roadster, the little, it was basically a Lotus Elise with electric motors and a battery. And I said, this is crap, and I think Top Gear said, this is crap. Everybody said this is crap except Robert Llewellyn, who I'd not so long ago done a stint on Scrappic Challenge with in the UK. And he said, oh, EVs are the future. And I thought, but again, I was wrong. Well, I wasn't so much wrong because I said they're not the future yet. Because at that stage, the first Tesla car was quite expensive. It was very high performance, didn't have much range. It was a bit impractical. There weren't the recharging networks. So it wasn't really practical at that stage. But a lot has happened in the last 10, 12 years. So now EVs, if I could afford an electric vehicle, I would buy one. I tell you, hands down, I would buy one because they are just fantastic. At the moment, I've got a 1994 Toyota pickup truck. It costs me $80 a month in gasoline petrol to drive from my home to the workshop to home again. And in the winter, that's about, most often when I do that because it's just too wet and windy and cold to walk. In the summer, quite often I'll walk the 10K round trip because that's fine. I quite enjoy that. But it just gets short trips, short journeys, but it uses a lot of gasoline because it's a pickup truck. and it uses a lot of gasoline because they're short journeys, and that means they have to have regular oil changes, and it's ching, 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 it all adds up. So if I could afford an EV, I'd buy one because the cost savings would be enormous other than the initial cost. I may wait until I find a Nissan Leaf, first generation Nissan Leaf with 1% left in the battery, so it has a range of 6 kilometres. And then I'll buy that and I'll go 5 kilometres to the workshop, plug it in, 5 kilometres home. Problem solved, jobs are good in. But yeah, an interesting look at our club. We have 3 EVs in our club. We have Neil with his Tesla Model 3 with the long range and the high performance and the big money. We have Bill, he has a Hyundai plug-in hybrid electric, which he can plug in at home. He lives quite a way away. He can plug it in, charge it up, drive almost all the way to the airfield. I think he uses petrol once he gets through the gate because the battery's just about exhausted. Plugs in at the hangar and drive almost all the way home again. It's effectively an EV because he very rarely, I think he said he's used a few $100s worth of gasoline since he bought it nearly a year ago. That's how little he needs the petrol. And of course, we've got Gordon, who's got the electric ice cream van, the little blue ice cream van he's got. That's fantastic. He gets them all the way to the gate before we have to tow them home. But no, EVs are fantastic. What worries me about EVs is that the world is going to be caught sleeping, napping, sitting on its thumbs. Already here in New Zealand, we're seeing a much faster uptake of EVs than I think most people thought. And I'm saying now that EVs are going to arrive very quickly. I think governments and people think, over the next 10 or 15 years we'll have more electric vehicles. I think we're going to see a massive stampede towards electric very, very quickly. And it's going to catch all the energy companies on the back foot. They're going to suddenly find, whoa, we have this massive increase in demand for electricity. We don't have the infrastructure to deliver it. So already we're seeing in the UK, effectively, you've got fuel rationing for EVs because they're having a thing where if you've got anything other than a very low rate charger in your home, they're going to have the power to turn it off at peak times to reduce load on their national grid. So they're going to be able to turn off your charger remotely if you're using too much electricity. And that's not going to get better. As more and more cars come onto the network and everyone gets home at night, has their dinner, plugs in the car to charge it, the massive extra increase in load means that the power companies will be turning off those chargers. And it won't be too long unless they do something. You wake up in the morning, get in your car and it's still flat because there was too much load overnight. Too many electric vehicles sucking juice from the grid. And the power companies have said, nope, we can't deliver that much power. We'll turn all these EV chargers off. And you wake up in the morning, you can't get to work. So yeah, EVs are the future, but we really do need to look long and hard, be working now to build more clean, green, renewable energy sources. Here in New Zealand, we're lucky we've got hydroelectric as our major power source. We've got plenty of rivers, we dam them up, and then the water flows down the hill, turns to turbines, makes the power. Woohoo! However, the greenies have gone a bit overboard in this country, so you can't actually turn a spade of soil without getting a permit. And it's meant that we haven't had any new hydro schemes. The hydro scheme, we're using ones that we built back in the 1960s because it's not possible to build anymore because it would be bad for the environment. Some little worm somewhere on the side of a hill might drown when they dam it and the water goes up. It's kind of, the Greens are saying, must be renewable, but you can't build hydro dams. I mean, seriously, people, get your act together. But I think the future is, because also the trouble with hydro is it's very weather dependent. You get a couple of drought years and your hydro levels drop and you run out of power. So what I think we need is something more reliable. And I've said for years, tidal energy. New Zealand is a very long, tall country. We've got North Island, South Island. There's a gap. There's a gap between them. And the tides rush through there twice a day. Twice a day, massive amounts of energy just rush through that gap. Stick some turbines in there. Bingo. Twice a day, you've got huge amounts of power. Now, there will be periods when there's no power because between tides, the flow stops before it reverses. But what you use the tidal power for is to offset the demand on your hydro storage. So even in very dry years, you're not using so much of your hydro power because at peak times it's all coming from the tidal turbines. And so your hydro levels are more of a backup, a reserve than your main power source. But nobody's listening. We'll wake up one morning and we've already had a power shortage. Just a month or two ago here in New Zealand, they shut the power off to a whole lot of houses because we ran out. We ran out of power generation capacity. It was a very cold night. Everyone turns on their heaters and the lights are on and they're cooking dinner. And they ran out of electricity, so they had to turn some houses off. Seriously, in the 21st century, in a first world country, you shouldn't have to do that. And this is before everyone starts plugging in their EVs in 4 or 5 years' time. Yeah, EVs, they're the future. I'd love one. If Elon, if you're watching, just send me, I don't know, nothing special, just a Model 3 Plaid. That's fine. just to get me to the hangar and back as quickly as possible. And we have Dover Sailplanes asks, what is your history with gliders, DLG sailplanes? I've noticed that they seem not to be very popular, but at one point in the 1980s, 90s, they seem to have been very much in vogue. Well, one of the problems with gliders these days is regulation. Now, in New Zealand, and I think just about every other country in the world now, you're not allowed to fly over 400 feet. Now, if you've ever tried to thermal soar and stay under 400 feet, you realize it's a bit of a problem, which is one of the reasons I fly DLGs, because a DLG, you can't see it very well at high altitude, so you tend to fly at lower altitudes anyway. But if you've got a decent sized glider and you're stuck maximum of 400 feet because that's what the law says, that's what the regulations say, it becomes a little bit of a frustrating experience. You know, you just hook a big thermal and you've got to bail out because you've already up to 400 feet. Oh no, and you've got to spend time finding another one. And of course, as we know, a lot of thermals are much stronger as you go up. You know, at ground level, you know, just sort of head height, they're often not very strong. So it can be quite difficult to get from that low level up to reasonable level. With a large glider on a fine day with strong thermals, it's fantastic. Used to be, before the rules changed, specking it out against the blue sky, you know, with a 3-meter sailplane. Fantastic fun. Can't do it anymore legally unless you've got special exemptions in the areas perhaps where you can do it, and it's just like it's a nightmare because I think the problem was once the regulators realised how many manned aircraft were being brought down by reckless people with 3-meter sailplanes flying them above 400 feet, they just had to impose these restrictions. It had to be done. Too many lives were lost, weren't they? I don't know, but don't get me started. This isn't a rant, it's a Q&A. But I do love my DLGs. In the spring, and it's coming around to spring shortly here, I will every day I'll be out there flinging my DLG and enjoying. Some of the flights are like 45 seconds where it's dead air. Some are 30 seconds, you get hooked in a whole lot of sync. But the ones where you're flying for 40 minutes and you think, I've had enough now, I'll come down and have a cold drink. Those are the days I love when there's so much variation in the lift. It's just, and I just can't get over the fact that a 68-year-old man can go out with the plane, throw it in the air, and it doesn't come down for 45 minutes. That is amazing. No petrol, no battery motors, no motors, just out of the energy of his own launch and the ability to hook a thermal to stay up for 45 minutes or more. That is brilliant fun. And I was really, really into gliders years ago. In fact, when I first got into radio control, I built a lot of powered models and crashed them all. I was terrible. My flying skills were atrocious. So I would, every weekend on a Saturday, I would build, or actually I'd start on a Sunday afternoon coming back from the field. I'd start building a new model because the one I'd taken out in the morning was broken. And I'd spend the whole week building my model. On Saturday, I'd have it all finished, paint it, and have it all beautiful. Roll up the flying field on a Sunday morning with this pristine, brand new model, start it up, launch it, pick up the pieces, and so rinse, lather, repeat, the whole thing. I had to do it over and over again because a plane would really last more than a weekend. And I thought, this is too hard. So I thought, maybe gliders would be easier. So I built a glider. It was a 6-foot wingspan, 72-inch wingspan. And I put a little Cox 049 power pod on it, a little power pod, because gliders nice and slow and easy to fly. So I put a little power pod on it. And I flew that for a while. That was fantastic. And then I took it to the slope, and I love slope soaring. It's a young man's game though, because I'm too old and, frail now. Not frail, but I'm just too much of a sookie baby. I'm a damp-eyed Nancy boy. I can't stand on those hills with the chilling cold winds of winter making your eyes run down and you're freezing, and in the old days your old long wire antenna would be curled back over your head because you're leaning into the breeze. Not for me these days. I'm just too soft. I'm too soft and flabby. I just can't stand it. So, but slope soaring, I loved. I don't know. I must have spent half my life on top of a hill when I was younger with a transmitter in my hand, and gliders, love them, but I'm afraid the regulations are working against us in a really terrible way in terms of certainly large thermal soarers, which is a damn shame. Wigwam Willie asks, you are obviously a man of principles and morals, and you play by the rules. Has he seen my channel? What is the wild and craziest thing you've ever done that no one knows about? Do you regret doing it? Oh man, so many things to choose from. I can't actually answer. I don't know. I can't. I'm old. The memory's failing, and the bad things always fail before the good things. What's the worst thing I've done? I don't know. I did 31 miles an hour in a 30-mile-an-hour zone once. Yep, that still haunts me to this day. But no, I'm sorry. If I think of it, I'll do it in the next. If I can come up with an answer to that, I'll come up in the next one, because I'm going to have to think long and hard. Yes, I've done lots of crazy things, I suppose, but they all seem to be fading into the fog of history. Sorry, I'm not trying to dodge that question. I will answer it in a future video. I shall make a note. Not sure says, may the Toyota never die. Great choice for a pickup. Yes, it's the second one I've had. I had a diesel before that, like the one that was on Top Gear, you know, the diesel. They were really great, but unfortunately it just rotted away. The rust got to it. And also here in New Zealand, we switched from sulphur in the diesel to no sulphur, which meant if I wanted to keep it going, I'd have to replace the injector pump and all the other bits and pieces. It was going to be horrendously expensive to get that diesel motor up to spec so I could still use it. So it was retired, and I was incredibly lucky because, as most people know, I don't make any money out of this. This is just, it pays the bills. So when I needed a new truck, a very good friend of mine said, I'll help you out. And so the pickup truck I'm driving now was the result of a friend coming to my aid and providing me. It wasn't expensive. In New Zealand dollar terms, it was $5,000, which I guess is a lot of money if you don't have it. But I didn't have $5,000. But I have that truck, and I've had that for years now. And as you say, they're bulletproof. They're absolutely fantastic. I hope it doesn't die now, but I've had that for a long time. I just change the oil in the filter every 6 months, and it's on its third set of tyres. And that's about it, really. Toyota pickups are fantastic. I probably wouldn't have anything else other than a Toyota. I did have a Nissan. It was okay, but again, it was a diesel. And then when they changed the diesel for fuel, it was going to cost a fortune to have it repaired, or not repaired, but upgraded to the new diesel. So yeah, and of course diesel's a bit more harmful to the planet, certainly older diesels. So yeah, if I do get another vehicle, it'll probably be an EV when they start making EV pickups that are affordable, if that ever happens. But yeah, Toyota, ace. And Remain1975 asks, what's the most non-RC hobby related product a company ever tried to get you to review? Well, I've had lots of offers of the sponsorship thing, Manscaped and a lot of that sort of thing, and Displate, which I've not interested. It's not core to my audience. But review. I've had a lot of the Amazon. You get a lot of Amazon sellers saying, "Oh, we'd like to send you our little tatty little crap drone made of plastic that will fly for 2 minutes and crash, and you'll never use it again, to review." Give it 12 stars if you want to, and we'll send it to you for free if you give us a good review. And naturally I've said no. And even where they haven't put a caveat on it, we want a good review. Sometimes I've said, how much will it cost us to get a review on RC Model Reviews? And I've said, it costs you nothing except the price of the product. But be aware, if you've got a crap product, I will tell people. And surprisingly, a lot of people just didn't send stuff after that. They obviously wanted to buy a good review. And I'm not selling reviews. I don't sell reviews. So yeah, I don't. I've had offers of stuff that's marginal, because nobody who watches my channels wants to see me review a toy drone. We all know how they fly. We all know what they. There's no value in that to my audience. My audience tends to be they're already in the hobby to a degree, that they're looking at more advanced products. So why would I waste everybody's time on a toy drone? There are plenty of channels doing the toy drone stuff. They say, oh, I've just got this toy drone. It's fantastic. It's so good that only 2 of the arms broke when I took it out of the box. Buy it now. Link in the description. That's the kind of thing that we see. I'm not going there. I'm just not going there. Honestly, I promise. He also asks, if you had a VIP free pass to fly FPV in any location in the world, and it meant you didn't have to worry about local laws or logistics of getting there, where would you go? Ringiboo. I'd go and see the boys at Ringiboo. I really would. Kenneth and Chef Man and Stone Man and hopefully Bear Pussy Man would be around. I'd love to go and visit those guys and fly at their field, FPV or otherwise. That'd be fantastic. I know it's not scenic, it's not fantastic, beautiful scenery and things. If we were talking about scenery, I'd like to go and see Mario from RC Shim. He's in Austria. They have some fantastic scenery. And Mario, if you don't watch his channel, go and have a look. I'll put a link in the description if I remember. Link to Mario's channel. He flies quads in some really nice locations, and Austria looks so nice. It looks like a picture on a chocolate box. It's like lovely green hills and rivers and valleys and little villages nestled amongst the hills. It's just so damn pretty looking. Now, people say New Zealand is a fantastic looking country, but to be totally honest, it has its scenic spots, but most of it is just farmland. It's just paddocks, fields with electric fences and sheep and cows. It gets a bit boring after a while. And in fact, from an FPV perspective, one of the problems with this country is not only do you have to get permission of the property owner to fly over their property, which means unless you've got permission, you can't fly anywhere. But the other thing is that there's electric fences everywhere. Everywhere's got electric fences, and you've got paddock fields with bulls in them. And so if you fly out over a farm somewhere and you crash in the drain somewhere, you have to negotiate past these electric fences, and sometimes it's not as easy as it looks. Sometimes they don't have the nice little plastic handles and things, and climbing over an electric fence is not a good thing for a man of my age to be doing. Because if you stuff it up, it's really painful. I know that from experience. And then if you get into a field where there's a bull, people have died because they enter fields with bulls, and the bulls, they're not there to have a good time, they're there to crush you to death. So yeah, I don't know. There are some very scenic spots in New Zealand. But again, a lot of those scenic spots are what we call national parks, national park areas. And our regulations say you may not fly over national parks because apparently drones could be too upsetting to the environment and the wildlife and everything. So you can't fly in a national park, can't fly a drone in a national park. Yet, if you go to a national park, there's bloody helicopters and all sorts of things flying overhead at low altitude. And they say, oh, you can't fly over national parks with a drone because there could be helicopters there. These massive, great man-carrying helicopters are flying over at low altitude, blowing snot out of the bush and the trees and the wildlife. But a little drone, oh no, that'd be too upsetting for the creatures. No. Oh, the things we have to deal with in this life. Isn't it terrible? KG Flyer 55 says, all right, Bruce, give us your workout. Nah, it's mine. I'm keeping it. I know that if I do a workout video and get into the health and fitness thing, and all my subscribers will unsubscribe and go and watch PewDiePie. One of the core things I think with a YouTube channel is sticking to your knitting. I've seen so many channels try to pivot. You know, that they're doing one thing and then they pivot. It was Eli, the computer guy, I think was a fantastic example of that. He had 1 million subscribers, massive views, and then he pivoted and it all disappeared. It all disappeared overnight because his core subscriber base just weren't interested in where he went. And if you're going to pivot, you might as well start a new channel because you're going to have just as many people on a new channel as one where everybody just says we're not interested. But no, I do exercise because I enjoy it and it helps me maintain a level of physical activity that I otherwise might not be able to, and helps me fight off the effects of whatever is screwing with my brain. So, but I'm not going to inflict that on people. Certainly, probably not on this channel. I may do just a brief, one-off, just a little bit of what I do, because it might surprise people how little I do and how much great effect it has. You know, if you're sitting there thinking, oh, I should do some exercise. Well, you should, because I couldn't believe how much my frail old body changed when I did what amounts to about 10 minutes a week. 10 minutes a week! Fantastic. Anyway, that's for another video or another channel or something like that. And then Kelly Captain says, great video, as always on topic. Ask me anything. How are you doing the funny Arnold Schwarzenegger voiceovers on your videos? Every time I hear it, I almost laugh my pants off. Well, I'm sorry for your embarrassment. Please don't watch my videos in a public place. You could get arrested if that's what happens. But yeah, there's a guy, what's his name? Romance. I got it from a guy on Fiverr. I went on Fiverr and thought, who's doing Arnold Schwarzenegger voiceovers? And I had a look, and they were all pretty mediocre until I found the one guy. And if I remember, I'll put a link in the description. He did a really good job. I'm most impressed with what he did. And that's the best Schwarzenegger impersonator I think I've ever come across. And he was cheap. It cost me $30. $30 for probably what amounts to 2 minutes of Arnie voiceovers. I haven't used them all yet. I've still got some in reserve. And it was great because it just adds, I don't know, you tell me, adds an extra dimension to the video, just something different. I mean, you know, and since I have been using Arnie as my spotter for a long time, I thought only fair that he has a say in some of the videos. You can hear him. You can't see him because I can't afford to pay the money to have his face. His agent wants an enormous amount of money for me to actually have him visible in my FPV videos, so we only ever hear his voice. And you know he's there. You know he's there because I told you. Obie Bradshaw says, when did you begin this hobby? Well, I didn't begin it. It was already going before I was even born. I didn't begin the hobby. I think you mean, when did I get into the hobby? I don't know. I can't remember exactly. It was a long time ago. I mean, I was just a child at the time. I was born at a very early age. I was only a baby. But I think I was probably, I was going to school, so I must have been 6 or 7. And I got given a kit set, one of those balsa sticks and tissue and the glue and the pins, and it was for a little glider. No, it wasn't. Wasn't a glider? Was it a glider? I can't even remember. I'm so old, my brain doesn't work anymore. I think it was a glider, and you had to glue all the little bits of balsa, pin them to the board and glue them, and then put it together and put tissue on it and dope it. And yeah, that got me interested, got me started. Oh, it's good. And then once I threw it and the damn thing flew, I was captivated. Oh, this is fun. And then I just went on from there. So it would be now well over 60 years I've been in this hobby. Well over 60. That's far too long for anybody to be doing anything. I should stop immediately. How long has the current facility been in use for RC activities? At the Tokoroa airfield, I think since the mid-1980s. So what's that, 35 years or something? It's quite a long time. And yeah, never been anyone killed. Never been any serious accidents. All the serious accidents have involved manned aircraft. So we're still ahead of the game. Right, getting back to hobby-related questions. A question from Stambo says, how do I locate 5.8 gigahertz video interference with basic equipment the average FPV pilot has? This interference makes it very hard for me to fly FPV on my own 6-hectare property. If I do locate it, is there anything I can legally do about it? Well, probably not, because if you're using the 5.8 gigahertz ISM band, ISM bands come along with the proviso that you just have to accept interference. It's just because it's a free-for-all, you're supposed to not produce interference, but you have to accept it if you encounter it. So, but if you want to find out how to find, let me just put something over here which will come in very useful. If you want to find out where your interference is coming from, then go to RC Model Reviews and build one of these. Or if you've got one, use it. It's a helical antenna. If you make an 11-turn helical, it'll be very, very directional. Where you point it, it will be very, very much, the beam is very narrow. So you can then put it on your goggles, turn your head around till the interference is at its worst. And you can do that with the video transmitter on your model off, because quite often you get lines come up in your video on the screen. Just move around till it's at its worst and your antenna's pointing at the source of the interference. If you're not sure still, then you stand over here and you find the direction, and then you go over here, you find the direction, and where the lines cross is where the interference source can be located. And you can go over and say, excuse me, sir, but do you realize that you're upsetting my enjoyment of life, and could you possibly change the time you're using, or whatever it is, or whatever. You just talk to people if you can find them. If you can find a source, if it's someone's house and they've got Wi-Fi, maybe they could even just change the channel of their Wi-Fi router in their house if that's what's causing the problem. It won't affect their operations, but it will make your life easier. And don't forget also that if they're interfering with you, you could be interfering with them. So if you go to them and say, look, I fly radio-controlled model aircraft, not drones, radio-controlled model aircraft, and I use this video system, and I'm afraid it might be interfering with your Wi-Fi. If you change the channel on your Wi-Fi, you may find you get a better Wi-Fi around you. Just be diplomatic. You twist the thing around. You're going to do them a favor. You're going to do them a favor by improving the Wi-Fi performance in their house if that's the cause of the problem. And quite often it is Wi-Fi. I found Wi-Fi and a number of other things. At our airfield, we've got a couple of channels that are pretty much unusable because there's so much banding, but only happens when the go-karts are operating. So obviously I did a sweep around, and yes, it's coming from the go-karts. I haven't bothered to go over and ask what they're doing or what they're using, because it may be timing gear or something, I don't know, but I just use a different band, just different frequency, and that's it. And if you've got noise right across the whole band, then obviously whatever it is must either be very powerful or it may be faulty. It could be faulty gear. So perhaps something is spewing out radiation it shouldn't do. Because also remember that microwave ovens, if you've got a bad microwave oven, there could be harmonics from the 2.35 whatever gigahertz that microwave oven's using. It could be all sorts of things causing problems. So yeah, just hunt around, you'll find it. It's not too hard. Yard Sale FPV says, what's the biggest disservice the hobby is doing to itself, and is it inherent to the hobby itself? Well, the biggest disservice the hobby is doing to itself is sitting on this fat bum and doing nothing as it gets its freedoms and rights taken away. I think if you've watched my channel, you'll know what I mean about that. We're just sitting around waiting for the inevitable. Interesting, I saw this morning an article on Drone DJ, I think it was, where Brendan Schulman, he used to be at DJI, he's left DJI, he's gone to Boston Dynamics, right? So he was the drone guy at DJI, he was the lawyer and the front man for DJI. He's left them, gone to Boston Dynamics working on ground-based robots. But he made a very interesting comment to Drone, is it Drone DJ? Oh, where is it? It was, yeah, dronedj.com. He said, right now, everyone has the freedom to fly a drone in just about any location in the United States, no matter who they are. For how long will that remain the case? And that's it. Remember I said endgame, FAA endgame? Their game is to get us into little paddocks, little fields in the middle of nowhere called freers. Brendan seems to be pretty much of the same opinion, that we can fly wherever we like at the moment in the USA, but for how long? I think he can see where this is headed. He can see that corral all the hobbyists into these little grassy fields, leave the skies open for the big boys with their big toys and their big wallets. So the biggest disservice we're doing to ourselves is just not actually getting off our bums and protecting our freedoms. And there'll be so much wailing and complaining and ranting when the freedoms are gone. When people finally wake up one morning and find that we can't fly except in this little AMA field, and the AMA doesn't want drones, what do? Then I'll have no sympathy for the people that are complaining, because they haven't done a damn thing now. Too many people sitting on their fat bums just expecting others to do the work, or saying, there's no problem, I see no problem, and walking off with their white canes in their hands. Anyway, that's ranting, sorry. James Roberts asks, what's your take on open source Express LRS system? Could it be the future of RC control links? For some, for some. Now, it's interesting. We've been using 2.4. 2.4 has been fantastic. When I started, as I say, I had single channel button, super regen, 27 megahertz. Only one person could fly at a time because this receiver wasn't selective enough to pull out individual channels from the band. Anyone on the band would get picked up and you get interference. That was our days. Only one person could fly at a time. Then we got super heterodyne receivers, super het they were called, and we could run 6 people at once on 6 individual channels. What were they? Brown, red, orange, yellow, green, blue. I don't know, I can't remember. Anyway, they were given color codes. And so I remember I was on red. Red was my channel. And I also had a transmitter on orange. So you had to get the right colored peg to fly because 2 people couldn't fly on the same channel or they'd shoot each other down. So then that was the case for many, many years. And eventually we got more bands in New Zealand. New Zealand was very lucky. We had 27, 29, 35, 36, 40, and 72 megahertz bands. We had heaps of bands. You know, you just choose a channel. You didn't have to worry too much about anyone else because choose one that no one else used. But in some places it was a bit of a problem. Some countries only had like 36 megahertz. Like I think the UK had 35 or 36 megahertz. So they were very restricted. Only so many people could fly at a time. And then 2.4 gigahertz came along and suddenly you just grab your transmitter, turn it on and fly. You didn't have to worry about other people because there was so much space in the 2.4 gig band, some 83, 85 megahertz, something like that, massive amount of space so that all these people could fly, use that Spektrum because there was so much of it. There was very little chance of anyone banging in, and if they did, it was just for a moment, and you didn't even notice the fact that one of the packets of data to your receiver was lost. Fantastic. That was great. And then we have people come along, oh, we want longer range. We want, you know, to go beyond visual line of sight, which of course is illegal these days. You can't do that. Oh, because people will die. I mean, we've been doing it for how many years? No one's died. But the FAA, the people who have never flown a drone in their lives probably, they know better than us. If you gave them I would really love to be out there flying one day and have someone from the CAA come along. And if they say, you're doing something wrong, Mr. Simpson, you must not do that. I'd say, okay, you fly the bloody thing. Give them the transmitter and just watch. And watch as the drone plummeted to the ground and say, I thought you were the experts. You were telling me what to do. Anyway, I'm getting ranty again. But yeah, so 2.4 gigs has a lot of benefits in so much as it is a short range signal. And you might think, well, why is that good? Well, because it's far enough. It goes far enough. I've flown my FrSky gear out to about 2.5 kilometers. 2.5 kilometers seems to be quite reasonable. You can get that far. You can get a bit further. At a push, you can go to 4K. If everything's right and you've got enough altitude with your model, you can get to about 4K with the FrSky link. Why would you want to go further than that? I don't know. I'm flying FPV. It's a long way to walk if something goes wrong. So I tend to fly just far enough. And I'm old. I can only walk, 20, 30 paces, so I stay close. But 2.4 gigs for the vast majority of people is ideal. It's perfect. It's fantastic. It's cheap. It's small. It's lightweight. The antennas are short. What's not to like about it, right? So yeah, but I've got crossfire. Some of my quads have got crossfire. Which one? There's one here somewhere. I've lost it. I've lost all my quads. No, anyway, I've got quads with crossfire. And that gives me better penetration if I'm going behind things, going into woods. In fact, some of the videos on this channel where I'm chasing the dirt bikes, I'm actually flying below the horizon because the dirt bike track is quite a bit lower than the airfield. So when I follow the dirt bikes along some part of the track, I'm actually below the horizon. You can't see the quad. Oh, BV loss. Oh my God, I've incriminated myself. Oh, black helicopters any moment. But I'm flying below the level of the ground from where I stand. And yet I still have a control link. Sometimes I get, RSSI low warnings, but I'm still got control of the quad. And sometimes the video will fade right out because it's on 5.8 gigahertz. And I've completely got, hundreds of meters of earth between the quad and my goggles, so I get no signal. Give it a punch, the throttle pops up, and there I get my video back. But the RC link is there all the time because it's a lower frequency and it is less affected by the terrain. So low frequency stuff like 433 and 915 and 886, they're all better for that kind of thing of penetration. But the vast majority of RC flyers aren't doing what I was doing there. They aren't flying beyond visual line of sight. So for them, the benefits that 2.4 gigahertz brings is enormous because if you look at long range systems, they operate on bands which are much, much narrower. As I said, you get over 80 megahertz of bandwidth available to you, 80 megahertz of frequencies available for you on 2.4. So there's plenty of room. There's plenty of room. If everyone used 1 megahertz of frequency, there'd be room for 80 people to fly simultaneously, right? But we don't use anywhere near a megahertz of bandwidth when we're flying RC. So there's heaps of room, almost unlimited. But you get down to 433 megahertz and the band is much, much narrower. It's just a megahertz or two wide. So you can only run 3 or 4 people maximum before they start interfering with each other. Same goes on 915 with the Express LRS and things like that, Open LRS. When you have that at those lower frequencies, there's not much bandwidth to play with. So if you want to fly a lot of people at once, not so good. I would challenge anyone to fly, for example, 10 crossfire systems in close proximity at the same time without noticing a marked increase in latency because of packet collisions, because the two systems are trying to use the same piece of frequency at the same time and they cancel each other out. So that piece of data from both systems is lost and you don't get control back till it comes back again. Of course, crossfire being low latency, you really notice when you're starting to lose packets. Link quality would drop dramatically. So yeah, it has applications, but it's not necessarily the future. I think for most people, as I say, I've got crossfire in a couple of craft, but most of the time I fly 2.4 because it's the perfect band and the perfect equipment for what I'm doing, line of sight or close proximity FPV, not going behind stuff, just flying around within 400 or 500 meters maximum. I don't need long range, but I do need freedom from interference. So if there are a dozen people standing beside me, I don't have to worry about them stepping on my signal because we're all operating in such a narrow, confined part of the radio spectrum. That was a very long answer to a very short question. Let's have a look at what else is there. Charles Ailing says, what replaces the AXN these days? Your build video back in the day got me hooked on the building side of the hobby. Well, nothing has to replace the AXN. You can still buy it from Hobby King, apparently. I was hoping they would send me one of the new ones so I could do a review and compare old and new, but they didn't seem to think it was worthwhile, so hey ho. Simon in our club has one of the new AXNs. It seems to fly just fine. So you could still build an AXN if you wanted to. Probably what's taken over from that is the knockoff of the Sky Surfer, the Bixler, the Hawk Sky. It comes out in a number of different forms. It's slightly different. It's basically similar to an AXN, somewhat larger. It's a little bit less strong. It's a little bit less aerodynamic. But they fly fine. They fly fine. So they're an option. That gives you more. If you're putting FPV in, there's much more room to work with. And so if you've got line of sight, they're easy to see because they're bigger. They're a perfectly fine model to do that with it. Now there are so many really good models that you can pick and choose whatever you want based on your requirements. I'm hoping this summer, if the whole lockdown crap thing eases and we get the freight channels open up a bit, I'll be able to do a lot more airframe reviews over the summer with RC model reviews. I've got a couple almost in the can, but I need to get a couple of bits more footage in at the moment. That's really kind of impractical. So there will be some coming out. Hopefully those models are still in production when I get those videos out. But as I say, the Bixler or the Dynam Hawk Sky or the, I forget, Graupner, what is it, Graupner make it? Anyway, the original one that they all copied to make those craft, they're pretty good. Gio Del Gonzo says, since we dabbled about health for a short bit, what is your blood type? Red. It's red, I've checked. I check from time to time when I cut myself, it comes out red. No. Actually, no, I am AB negative, I think, AB negative. So it's the least common. I'm a universal receptor though. I can accept anyone else's blood, whereas if you're an O, you're a universal donor. So it's better to be an AB than an O, although I think under the COVID, ABs are quite, O is the best to have. I think AB is where she's more likely to get complicated. Who cares? I don't bleed a lot anyway, so it's not really important, I don't think. What else does he say? He's B minus and his fiance is O minus. I'm not huge on the personality trait part, but I don't think it makes a difference. I think your blood's your blood. I don't think it really turns you from one person into another. And a lot of people base their diet on their blood type. I don't think if it is important, it's a very, very small, if it is a factor, it's a very, very small factor. Nothing really to worry yourself about. Just try not to bleed too much. James Copley says, can you compare Spektrum to other systems such as FreeSky? I heard you say on one of your videos that Spektrum, not so good, and there are cheaper, better systems out there. Thinking of upgrading, but reluctant to shell out the dollars for new Spektrum releases. Yeah, well, Spektrum is kind of, you pay for the brand. In all aspects of merchandising, some companies spend a fortune creating a brand, a recognizable brand, and that's an expensive business. You know, if you like you create something and you want people to know about it, like Adidas and Nike, they're brands. I mean, they make sneakers like everybody else. They make clothes like everybody else, but they would promote the brand, which gives sometimes the illusion that the product is better than it is. You know, I've heard of that. Oh, that must be good. In the case of Spektrum, they've spent a lot of money creating a brand, and they also try to back it up with really high levels of support and service. I had a guy contact me once say, I really like the Spektrum gear. I've got I think it was a DX12 or something he'd bought. He says, and Spektrum are fantastic. He said, I'm now on my 5th transmitter because the 4 before this broke or they didn't work, they stopped working, I had to send them back, but they've replaced it 5 times or 4 times. There's fantastic support. And I'm thinking, why are you impressed that a product broke 4 times? The fact that the support there is irrelevant. I would have much rather had a product that didn't break. But this is what they do. They spin up this, we're great, we've got the support, we're here for you, and it's all. And if you've got the money and you really want to buy a brand name product, go ahead. Spektrum now is pretty much as good as anything. In the early days, it was pretty crappy, to be honest. It's as good as anything. You can't go wrong buying Spektrum, but you can get a hell of a lot more for your money if you buy something that's not quite so strongly branded. And these days, if you're going out into the marketplace, you've got a number of manufacturers all vying in the same piece of market space. Now, FreeSky used to be the manufacturer. I only flew FreeSky because they were such good products. But now FreeSky, they've got a bit up themselves. They're going the branding thing. And while everyone else is making smaller and smaller transmitters, I mean, let's have a look. I've got my Tango 2. It's a little transmitter. I've got my Jumper T-Lite. It's a little transmitter. Everyone's going small on transmitters. The trend is towards small transmitters. FreeSky are making great big bloody home cinema systems with screens this big and sticks and switches to Christmas and back. Some people want those radios, but your average flyer probably doesn't. Your average flyer wants something that's more convenient, you can throw in the back of the, in a backpack, or throw in the back of the car and take it out, not have to have a massive great suitcase to carry it in. So I think if you're looking for best value for money, there are plenty of options. And you could go Radio Master, they're making some really good radios. You can still go FreeSky. FreeSky still makes some good radios, but the value's there in some cases. But one of the beauties of Radio Master and Jumper and the other multi-protocol systems is that you can still use the gear you've got. If you've already got some Spektrum gear, hey, you can still use it, because the multi-protocol radios, and that includes this little Jumper, this one here, but the multi-protocol, they will bind to Spektrum, they'll bind to FreeSky, they'll bind to High-Tech, they'll bind to Futaba, they'll bind to almost anything. So if you've got an existing investment in radio gear and you want a new transmitter, if you get a multi-protocol one, well, you haven't lost that investment. You don't have to replace those receivers. You can still use them. You can still use all that old gear. So that is fantastic. It enables you to gradually transition your fleet to whatever's cheaper on the day. I mean, if you go out there and someone's having a massive sale on Spektrum receivers and they're a good receiver, you can buy them up and save money. Or if someone's having a massive sale on FreeSky compatible receivers, you can buy those up. You don't have to care anymore. You don't have to worry. The transmitters are receiver agnostic, and that's a huge thing, which means you will save a lot of money, which means you can buy more receivers, which means you can have more models for the same amount of expenditure, and that's always got to be a good thing. The only thing you'll have to do is learn how to use the OpenTX software, but that also is a good thing, because once you wrap your head around it, and there are so many videos online explaining how to do things, it is just so simple and intuitive. So you will be able to pick it up reasonably easily. If you don't know how to do something, go online, look on YouTube, someone will give you a step-by-step how to do this. You want to use flaps? This is how you use flaps. You want to do a aileron and elevator mix? This is how you do it. But even then, the new OpenTX has built-in wizards and things, and there's a thing called OpenTX Companion, which is a piece of software you run on your computer to set things up. It's brilliant. And the beauty of something like this compared to the newer, more advanced Spektrum receivers is this doesn't take half an hour to boot up. It doesn't run Android. It runs its own OpenTX. It's really quick, really fast, really reliable. You don't have to worry about all the crap that you might get with a Spektrum. But if you want Spektrum, it'll work. Travis Stevens asks, thanks for all your work, Bruce. What do you think the next innovation in the hobby will be? 2 years ago, we went digital. 2 years ago? It's long before that, I think. Anyway, 2021 seems to be the year of the AIO. What do you think is next? Well, I think small will be big. I think small is going to be very big. We've seen this push towards 250 grams, sub 250. In Canada, if you fly sub 250, no prescriptive rules. I'm really going to push hard for other regulators to introduce something similar. Give the hobby some space. We don't have any space. The regulations is squashing everybody into grassy fields in the middle of nowhere. We need the regulators to say, well, if it's small, if it's a tiny little drone, there's no danger to anybody. People have been flying much bigger models in public areas, and for years and years, no one's died. Let's give the hobby some breathing space. Let's say if you want to fly a sub 250, well, just don't endanger people, don't endanger property, away you go. That's what they say in Canada, and it's working really well. So if we do that, then you're going to see everybody, we've seen it already, you can now get fantastic small receivers, fantastic small servos, small flight controllers, small ESCs. Everything can be miniaturized. And if you look at Umagod's 250 design, everyone's saying it flies just like a 5-inch, but it's sub 250, and you can get these things to fly just like bigger craft because the electronics and all the technology is improving at such a rate. So pretty soon, you will be able to do almost anything you want with a sub 250 gram model. And if you're flying FPV, you've got the goggles on, you don't know how big it is. You can't tell because you're only looking out the window. If it flies like a bigger model, who the hell gives a damn if it's only 250 grams? In fact, that means you can do things that may not be safe to do with a larger craft. You can fly in places where a larger craft would be not as advisable, but a small one may be perfectly safe. So I think the next big thing is going to be the little thing, making things smaller, safer, miniaturizing, and along with that should go a reduction in cost as well. Hopefully we're going to see things a bit cheaper as well, which would be utterly fantastic for everybody, if only the regulators will grant us that concession. Will they? Well, that's really up to you guys. We've got to put the pressure on them. And Jeremy Snake asks a question that no one else is interested in. When are you going to finish the Outlaw build video? That's a very good question. I've explained this a couple of times. I've built probably my 4th Outlaw now doing the build series. But the last one, which was good, I unfortunately grabbed the SD card, which I thought was something else, reformatted it, and that had all my damn files on it, so I lost them. So I have to wait for the lighting to improve, do it all again. There'll be 5th Outlaw build I'll be doing. And I'll use that part 2. But to be totally honest, I'm going to be totally honest here, it's not rocket surgery. It's not a hard craft to build. If you look at all the pieces and you'll line them up, you'll see how it goes together pretty damn easily. So it just needs a bit of hot glue and bingo, there you go, she's all together. And remember, it's only foam board. If you stuff it up, don't worry, cut another bit out, do it again. So I'd encourage people just to go for it, go for the part 2, do it yourself. And then when I get the part 2 out, you can see you might have done it better than me because I'm just one guy, and there are plenty of people out there who are much better at building than me. But go for it. I know people have built their own from the part 1 video with all the dimensions and everything, and they've gone out and they've built them and they fly. They seem happy. So here's a challenge to all you people waiting for part 2. Have a go before I do part 2. Show me what you've done. And then when I do part 2, you can correct me on all the mistakes I make because you've done it yourself already. That's a good thing. But yeah, it'll probably, with the way the weather's going, we're officially in spring, but it's really the end of winter. And like today, it's crap. It's blowing a gale, wet, cold. Not enough light at the workshop to do that. I have been meaning to get some more lighting in. In fact, one guy said he would even pay for the lighting, but unfortunately, he wanted to send it by PayPal. I don't have PayPal because PayPal screwed me years ago, and I refused to deal with them anymore. So yeah, it'll come. But as I say, give a go yourself. It's $1 worth of foam board, a couple of bucks worth of foam board. What's to lose by trying to put those bits together yourself? You may find it very, very interesting, like a jigsaw puzzle. It's like no one has instructions for jigsaw puzzles. Just do it. And Michael Harrod says, how do you store your LiPo batteries these days? I know you've done a video in the past, but was wondering if this had changed. I use an ammo box, but have been puzzled about recommendations I've read about drilling holes or removing rubber seals to allow gas escape in the event a LiPo combusts. Would that make it safer? I've read theories that if it's sealed tight, then the box could explode and cause some more damage, injury like a bomb. Were ammo boxes designed in the first place to help contain the effects of exploding ammunition without the need to drill holes in them, or to stop the ammunition from being ignited by some external source? Well, ammo boxes were built to enable people to carry large amounts of ammunition very easily. Carrying 500 rounds of loose ammo is very difficult. Put in a box, much easier, especially if it's got a handle on it. They weren't there so much to protect the ammo as to make them easily transportable, although it does protect them from shock and so forth. How do I store my LiPos? Well, I just usually put them all on a large can of gasoline. And then if they go up, they go up. No, seriously, LiPo storage is important. The most important thing about LiPo storage is to make sure your LiPos are not damaged. If you damage a LiPo, you have a crash and it's a bit bent, always treat it with suspicion. Always treat it with suspicion. What I've done at my workshop is anything that's not quite right, I stick it in a microwave oven. I've got a microwave oven on the fridge. I put my sus LiPos in the microwave oven because microwave ovens are pretty damn good at suppressing fire. I mean, it's a metal box and it's got a little vent, but it's got another box around the box, so it's going to basically make it very difficult for a LiPo that goes up to set fire to anything. And as for your ammo box, yes, you do need to make some holes because the pressure that builds up is quite significant. And that means if the LiPo box goes bang, everything gets thrown all over the place. You've got no containment at all. It's much better to have some holes that direct the flow of hot gases into an area that's safe, whether it's towards a concrete wall or simply up into the air in a vacant space. But the worst thing you can have is uncontrolled release of those gases where they go wherever they want to go, which if your ammo box blows up, you've got fragments of metal and hot gases and flames. Yeah, you really want to control the way in which those gases go. Now, You can get special containment things. There's a thing called the bat box or something, which does a wonderful job of controlling the flames and things. But the best thing is to avoid them going up in the first place, which means always take care of them. Don't store them fully charged. Make sure they're stored at a storage charge. And the other thing that I find with all these commercial solutions is you put everything in a box. So if one goes up, they all go up. And what I plan to do this year, which I did have before, but I'm going to make it even better, is get some of those cement blocks, cinder blocks with the big holes in them. The big block and they've got a hole, sort of, like 2 holes, and then they've got cement around them. I'm going to make a little battery storage area where each battery goes into an individual hole in the cinder blocks, and then I can put a sheet of some kind of fireproof material over the top. That way, if one battery goes up, it's not going to set the rest of them off. It's going to be contained within its little area of the block. That to me makes a lot more sense than having everything thrown into an ammo box or whatever, especially ammo boxes, because they're made of steel and steel's conductive. So if you happen to have perhaps a nick in your balance lead or a nick in your wire somewhere and it touches the metal box and another piece of the battery touches the box and you get a short circuit, well, that's going to set the damn things off anyway. I wouldn't use a metal box. Wouldn't use a metal box for lipo. I said, what about the microwave oven? Yeah, but they're sitting on a glass plate in the microwave oven and glass doesn't conduct. So that's what I'd have to say. But overall, just take care of your lipos. I am fortunate to say I've never had a lipo go up on me yet that that wasn't expected. And I say it wasn't expected. I did make a mistake once. You get those and this is one of the worst things I've ever done. You get those leads, you used to get them on charge, they have all the different type connectors so you can charge different batteries. They've got a JST and an XT60 and a Dean's connector, all going back to 2 leads you plug in your charger. Well, one day I was charging a 1S battery on the JST connector, and I had it charging, and I basically it finished charging. I thought, okay, and I forgot about it, left it plugged in. Then I came along to charge a 4-cell pack, so I plugged that into the XT60. You can imagine what happened. We had a 4-cell pack going straight into a 1-cell pack, so we had like 15 volts going into a 4-volt cell. Boom! The little 1 cell just exploded and just disappeared. It was only a 300 milliamps, so it wasn't a big flame burst or anything. It's been bang, absolute bang. But those are the simple things that can catch you out. You've really got to pay attention when you're dealing with the lipos. It only takes one mistake to create a nasty situation. So again, have an extinguisher nearby. Extinguishers are not always totally effective, but they're better than nothing. A bucket of sand is probably a good thing. If you've got all your lipos stored somewhere, get a bucket of sand and put it nearby. Sand's pretty cheap, buckets that don't cost a lot. Have it sitting in the corner, and if something does go up, throw the sand on it. It's probably the most effective way to mitigate some of the damage that's going to happen. You can keep piling the sand on, but water won't work. CO2 doesn't work. I don't think dry powder works either, but sand, at least the mass of it might slow things down a bit. Anyway, that's it. I think that's enough for one video. I think we've had enough of me talking endlessly. But that's just another one of the answers to the Ask Me Anything video, and I'll get on doing some other stuff. So much to do here today, even though I can't get out and do any damn flying. Thank you for watching, folks, and yeah, go about your business. Nothing to see here. Bye for now.
Overregulation is like a tumor. It's killing a hobby. It must be terminated. Now!